Fancy seeing you here. I'm your host, Allie Ray, a serial entrepreneur and mom who loves building brands and raising babies. This is a podcast about being on brand and in season in every facet of your life. Each week, we dive into topics around business and brand development while sprinkling some hard-earned life lessons in there too. So if you love a good brand and a good breakdown, buckle up and come along with me as I sort of seamlessly switch between major life roles in an attempt to fulfill all the life dreams of a Type A Enneagram 3 millennial small business owner who wants to help other entrepreneurs and raise good humans. This is the Allie Ray Haney Show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Allie Ray Haney Show. Today is a topic that was actually partially requested by one of my longtime Instagram followers. And then as I was getting into planning the episode, I started thinking about a through line that I've had in conversations with many potential clients and current clients about how they wanted to establish themselves as a thought leader in their industry. So I am bringing together thought leadership and the follower request of how to create a personal brand together into one episode today. The thought of becoming a thought leader has been an increasingly popular idea and goal due to what I think are just like a few large names that are doing this right now, that are doing it very successfully. You can think of people such as like Jenna Kutcher or Amy Porterfield in the creative industries. And then there are others like Gary Vee and Neil Patel, Andy Frisella, all of those different types of big, almost household names at this point who are becoming thought leaders in their field, as well as sometimes influencers in their field or industry. So I think that's where kind of this uptick in interest of becoming a thought leader comes from. But I want to dive in today to kind of demystify what a thought leader really is, and also the pros and cons that come with becoming a thought leader. And finally, how the power of personal branding all plays into that, and just how important it is to have it when you're trying to establish yourself as a thought leader. So before we dive into pros and cons and get any deeper, I really want to define our terms so that we know exactly what we're talking about when I say thought leader. And a thought leader is essentially an expert in a specific area of knowledge who others in the industry can turn to for guidance. So they are the authority in their industry. They are the authority in their field. And some of the key characteristics of a thought leader, we're going to dive into a few of those today. Like I mentioned already, one of those is that they have deep expertise in their field. I've also heard it called a subject matter expert. But the interesting part to me is that the word expert is different, I think, today than it was maybe 20 years ago. I hold the term expert a little bit looser than I used to, because essentially you can become an expert in whatever you want. With the free flow of information on the internet today, on social media, you can become an expert. For example, like I did not go to school to be a small business owner. I did not go to school to be a branding and marketing agency owner. I went to school to be a teacher. So I've become an expert in my field because of all of the research I've done independently, not for the school that I've attended. So all I'm saying with that is that you can create something that only really you and the people that you train are also experts in. So that could be a framework, that could be a system, that could be a process. It's something that you create, so therefore you are the only one that can be an expert in it. But the thing that makes you a thought leader is that you are not creating something that's been created before. You have a unique perspective or a unique insight, a unique approach to whatever it is that you are creating. So regardless of the field or industry that you're in, as a thought leader, you must bring something new to the scene. For example, if you're a business development consultant, you could create a unique approach to business development where you are the expert and only you can replicate that process, or only you can teach others to replicate that process. So now that we've established you as an expert in your field and you bring unique insights to the field, that's not quite enough. The thought part of the thought leadership goes far beyond just having the thought in your own head. Once that thought is formulated in your mind, you must then be able to articulate that thought in a way that your target audience can understand it. So you're breaking up a big concept into digestible pieces for the people that want to consume it. And this is easier said than done because it ends up being a ton of content creation. And that content creation can be done through multiple channels like a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, social media, whatever channels you choose. But a thought leader is committing to putting their thoughts out to their audience consistently in a way that's easy for them to consume. So not only, you have that inception of the thought, but then you have to disseminate that thought. One other key characteristic of a thought leader is just the overall ability to influence the industry conversations and the industry trends of the industry that they are in. And this is kind of like the flashy part of being a thought leader, is influencing the industry trends. But a lot of work goes into the front end of being a thought leader before you ever get to the influence part. Gary Vee, he didn't start out with 10.2 million followers, right? No one did. So the consistency in being a thought leader and showing up as such will eventually lead to a place where you can influence the industry that you're in, but it does not start that way. So I've used the word influence quite a lot, just in the past couple points that I've been making. So let me take a second and briefly differentiate between a thought leader and an influencer. I see the main difference being in the goals that each of those titles has. So an influencer may have a larger reach, but less authority, whereas a thought leader may have less reach, but more authority. Now, do I consider the titles interchangeable? Personally, I don't think so. I do think that every thought leader can be an influencer, but not every influencer can be a thought leader, right? Because we're drawing the lines between reach and authority. Not every influencer is going to have authority within their niche to the point where they are consistently going to be dictating industry trends. So just for a quick and very high level differentiation between the two, a thought leader and an influencer, I quickly asked Gemini, which is a form of AI, which 5 industries had the highest concentrations of thought leaders versus which 5 industries had the highest concentration of influencers, just to see if even AI can see like a difference in trends within the industries of the 2 different titles. So thought leaders are most concentrated in technology, business/marketing, healthcare wellness, finance/investing, and education/personal development. Whereas influencers are most concentrated in fashion/beauty, lifestyle/travel, food/beverage, gaming/entertainment, and fitness/wellness. So while there are some overlapping industries like the wellness industry, typically the industries that have thought leaders are separate from the industries that have influencers. Just from these, like I said, high level differentiation, it seems like the thought leader industries are much more fact-based versus influencer industries are much more opinion-based. Overall, I would say it is more common to be either a thought leader or an influencer, and not likely for you to be a thought leader and influencer. Okay, we're going to take a moment before we jump into the pros and cons of becoming a thought leader. I want you to be really well equipped to achieve your goals, no matter what those goals are. So we're going to take a quick break for an ad for one of my favorite goal planning tools.
Have you guys seen the meme that says, were you a pleasure to have in class, or were you really the type A oldest daughter with an undiagnosed anxiety disorder? That's me. But the words in that statement I really like to focus on are pleasure and type A. And one thing that brings me pleasure as a type A woman is goal planning and achieving. Since 2017, I've been using this incredible goal planner called Power Sheets, made by a company called Cultivate What Matters. It's a completely comprehensive, standalone resource that walks you through the prep work to identify which areas of your life you want to focus on for the year. I use this goal planner for both my personal and professional goals. And my favorite part is that it walks you through how to break down those big goals into small, actionable steps to execute throughout the year. A few goals I've achieved by using this planner are sending annual birthday cards to my friends, creating a schedule to meal plan and purchase groceries, and going through an entire service offering pivot within my business. So if you're looking to become more goal-focused and task-minded, Power Sheets are a great tool to get you there. Head to the Cultivate What Matters website at cultivatewhatmatters.com and use code Allie Ray Haney for 10% off at checkout. All right, now back to the episode.
Now that we have all of our definitions out there, let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of becoming a thought leader. Because initially, it sounds like a really romantic title in that it demands respect and you're an expert in your field, you can influence industry trends, but it doesn't come without some drawbacks, of course. So we're going to explore all of that now. And as we explore these, I want you to pretend that you, the individual who's listening to this episode, is the thought leader, because this will set us up for exploring how personal branding comes into play as a thought leader later on. Okay, first let's dive into some of the items that are in the pro column of becoming a thought leader. So first, of course, you have increased brand awareness and credibility, and that brand can be either a business-based brand like me as a small business owner, or it could be a personal brand in that it is just one individual. So someone's that is still like working a corporate job. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be one or the other. Regardless, as a thought leader, you are increasing awareness around your brand, either as a business or as an individual, as well as your credibility as that business or individual. So everyone's heard of the know, like, and trust factor. And that's exactly what I mean when I say increased brand awareness and credibility. They see you so often because you're so consistently putting out new content that you become familiar to them. And people are obviously more likely to purchase from or hire people with whom they are familiar. So that's the benefit of having increased brand awareness and credibility. Second, being a thought leader attracts new clients and business opportunities. I'm going to quickly tell you a story about the Escape Conference. For those who don't know, I co-founded the Escape Conference with my friend and business partner, Cassie O'Driscoll. We hosted the first ever Escape Conference for creative entrepreneurs in their growth phase just this past April, and many of the speakers who were there, of course, they were there to educate our attendees, but they were also there to demonstrate their expertise to and to establish themselves as an authority in their field and ultimately gain new clients and possible referral partners. This is incredibly effective because the attendees who were able to meet them in person, that contributes back to that like, know, and trust factor I just mentioned, so that when they are ready to purchase, they know someone who can help them and who they trust. Next, another pro is that you establish yourself as a trusted advisor. And one thing I've learned as I've transitioned my business away from wedding photography, which is a B2C model, and into a branding and marketing agency, which of course is a B2B model, is that the sales cycles are so much longer. I could have an inquiry call with a bride and they would book me usually within 24 hours. I can have an inquiry call with a business owner and it could be months of follow-up before they actually book a service with me. So when you establish yourself as a trusted advisor through thought leadership, oftentimes, even if a business owner isn't ready to book with you at the moment, you will be top of mind when they are ready due to your consistency in presenting yourself as a thought leader. The same goes for corporate friends listening to this episode. Even if a position isn't open at a company now, that doesn't mean that those in hiring positions aren't thinking about you for when they do have an opening where you fit. Next, you position yourself as an authority figure in your industry. We've already kind of touched on this under the credibility bullet point, but I'm going to tell you like a little bit of a story about my recent introspection into my own business and brand lately. I took one of those online quizzes that told me what my brand archetype was. And this was so interesting to me because I can usually tell others' brand archetypes, or at least narrow it down to like 2 archetypes, just while speaking with them and hearing about their business. But I cannot for the life of me do that for myself. My result of this brand archetype quiz that I took was that I was the sage archetype. And the sage is one, brief description is just the sages who prides themselves on knowledge and disseminating that knowledge or wisdom. And it's so funny to me because of course, like my background as a teacher, it makes sense. But I've never really truly applied that within my business. But all of that to say is that those who fall into that sage archetype are often those people that people look to as an authority in the field and therefore the thought leader in their industry because that person or that company is considered the expert. So that's the goal of every thought leader, is to become the authority or the expert within their industry. Next, a pro is that you can begin to gain speaking engagements and other like media coverage. And ultimately, this can become another stream of revenue. This can come in the form of speaking at events or conferences like the Escape Conference. It could come in the form of being interviewed on podcasts or being brought into private online communities where your expertise is needed and valued. There are many different ways to get out there and establish yourself, not only as a thought leader, but then monetize it through speaking engagements. Finally, just looking at the overall bigger picture, you can contribute to shaping your industry's future, which is a really exciting thing. Like I mentioned, you are the one coming up with the fresh insights and the fresh ideas in your industry. So oftentimes that those thought leaders have an issue with how things might be being done or conducted within their industry, and they want to change it. And if that sounds like you're probably a good candidate to be a thought leader. Now that we have chatted about all of the pros of becoming a thought leader, we also have to discuss the cons, because everything we've chatted about so far sounds really shiny and exciting, but it doesn't obviously come without some drawbacks. So becoming a thought leader requires a significant time and energy investment. Oftentimes, especially in the beginning, you're not getting paid for your thoughts alone. You're just establishing yourself as the authority, but unfortunately that doesn't come with a paycheck usually. Instead, you're selling your offers or products, or in the case of being in the corporate world, you're selling yourself and your skill sets in order to get paid and be able to make a financial living. But the thoughts themselves are almost an added additional layer of work that you're not getting paid for. Now, once you actually create those, thought leadership pillars or pieces, it can then be challenging to maintain consistency in posting those, in disseminating those, and also to stay relevant. It's very rare that you are going to find just one thought upon which you can build a whole repertoire of thought leadership messaging. It's a constant evolution of information, especially in today's world of social media and fast-paced content consumption. Creating consistently can be a drain because it can sometimes feel like you never can turn off or step away. And you all know that my biggest thing when it comes to content creation and to branding is that consistency is key. So when you sign on to be a thought leader, it absolutely is not a passive income. It is not a passive job by any means. The next con is that it could open you up to criticism. It could open you up to differing viewpoints, which sometimes criticism and differing viewpoints are not a bad thing, but unfortunately, cancel culture is still very much alive, and being a thought leader oftentimes means that you're coming up with unique and new ideas, and those unique and new ideas are not always well received, especially if they go against an industry standard or they go against the way it's always been done. So keep in mind that you are opening yourself up to public criticism more than you would had you not been a thought leader. Next is being a thought leader may not be a good fit for all businesses or personalities. Like I mentioned before, there are certain types of people, certain types of businesses, and certain types of industries that are more open to thought leadership. Definitely look inside yourself and see if that's what you truly want before continuing to jump in with both feet within your industry. And lastly, it can lead to some unrealistic expectations from potential clients if you're using this thought leadership sort of as the beginning of the funnel to get people into your programs, your services, your offerings. One thing I've seen is that thought leaders gain more traction. Once they gain more traction and accrue like a bigger audience, their service offerings often change. They shift away from the one-on-one work or the one-on-one coaching, and they transition to being able to coach the masses through either courses or digital products. And that is really smart on their part because it's much easier to scale sustainably that way. However, it can give a little bit of a misconception to their audience that they might get the one-on-one access to them. So it's important to just manage those expectations when you're put in that place of authority. Okay, we've gone over the pros, we've gone over the cons of thought leadership, but now I'm going to touch on how and why personal branding should be incorporated into thought leadership, which is what the person who requested this episode really wanted in the first place. So, like I said before, not all personalities are made for becoming a thought leader. So I definitely encourage you to reflect and look inside if that's a commitment that you want to make prior to taking the leap. But if you ultimately decide that thought leadership is the right path that you want to go down, here's where I would start when it comes to establishing your own personal brand. First, I tell this to all of my business owners. We always start out with brand strategy. And one of the first things that we go over when we're going through that brand strategy is developing core values and a mission. I encourage everyone to do this, not just the business owners that I work with, but literally every adult out there, because I can promise you it will help you to determine whether a company is a good fit for employment if you're still in the corporate space. It will help you determine whether an organization is worth your time that you're volunteering and the energy that you spend devoting to it. Those core values serve as your North Star anytime in your life, anytime anything in your life doesn't really feel quite right. So that's where I would first start, is defining your core values and your mission. Then I would determine what industry or niche or area of expertise that you want to explore. This is likely probably already established, but even within a broad industry like nonprofits, for example, you can find a niche within the greater industry to establish yourself in. So I would define that second. Next, I would develop a clear and consistent brand message. This means, what are the recurring pieces of content that you'll be talking about? What are the words and phrases you will repetitively use? What are the stories that you will repetitively tell to illustrate your points? How do you describe the new process that you've created so that your audience understands the process? I encourage you not only to answer these questions that I'm asking you now, but I actually want you to document the answers somewhere. It could be on a notepad, like old school pen and paper. It could be on a note on your phone, but I want you to keep a running list that at anytime you encounter or think of a news story that you may want to tell that will adequately illustrate your overall brand mission and message, you can add that story or that word or phrase to that list that continuously is being updated. Now, throughout this gathering of brand messaging, I want you to showcase your expertise and your personality. And this is where brand voice and tone come in. There are thought leaders out there who are loving and encouraging and optimistic. And then there are thought leaders out there who curse every other sentence and have a really rough, intense messaging. They know what their audience is receptive to, and whoever your audience is, let the parts of your personality that resonate with them shine through to them, because that is how you will build trust and connect with your target audience. My definition of branding, which I've said this in many an episode, but my definition of branding is how your audience feels about your business or your service offering or your product. So please be conscious and aware of how you are making them feel through your messaging and your voice and your tone, because that will ultimately become your personal brand. Finally, I want you to find where your target audience is And that's where I want you to hang out. Create your engaging thought leadership content right there in the platform where they already are and make it easy for them to consume. Real quick, I'm going to take a quick moment to tell you a story about a service that I used to be able to show up more confidently for my audience.
Look, there's nothing more on brand or in season than confidence. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a mom, in a time of imposter syndrome and constant comparison, we could all use a little bit more confidence. And that's what Created Colorful gave me. Created Colorful is a virtual color analysis where you are given your knockout color palette for guaranteed constant confidence. Imagine going into a store and knowing exactly what to pick out to make you look your best at all times. That's what Created Colorful gave me after a bout with postpartum depression, as well as an isolating entrepreneurial endeavor. So if you would like a quick confidence boost, use code AllieRay for $15 off your Created Colorful virtual color analysis. You can book that analysis at createdcolorful.com/virtual color analysis. Use code AllieRay, that's ALIRAE, at checkout for $15 off your consult and be one step closer to the confidence you crave.
So for me, sometimes it's easier to see some real life examples when it comes to learning a new concept, i.e. personal branding or thought leadership. So I wanted to share with you a couple of examples of some thought leaders / some are influencers too, but mostly thought leaders who have successfully used personal branding. The first is Jenna Kutcher, and she's actually one of the ones that inspired me to start my own podcast. Her industry or niche is marketing and branding. And she has an interesting background with personal branding because she's been able to change her personal brand so many times throughout, I think she's been in business almost 15 years, which is kind of the point and ultimately the beauty of personal branding. She lets people into certain parts of her life and has learned along the way which parts of her life that not only resonate with her audience, but also which parts she does not feel comfortable sharing. For example, she used to share a lot about her kids, and while she still does share about her kids, she no longer shares her children's faces. So that's a piece of her personal branding, is that she wants everyone to know that she is a well-rounded business owner and mother, and that if she can do it, they can do it too, but there's still a boundary that she draws within her personal branding to make it work for her life. But if I were ever to meet Jenna in person, I would feel like I was speaking with an old friend because I've heard her voice. I know her personality. I've heard her stories so many times. I just told you one of her stories, right? It's like I know her without ever having met her. Another personal brand, which was actually the first personal brand I ever encountered back when I first started my own business, was Caitlin James. Caitlin is a photographer, actually also based out of Central Virginia. She harnessed her personal brand to be able to leverage a higher than average wedding photography price with her brides and grooms. But she also nurtured the like, know, and trust factor within the education side of her business, where she educated other photographers on how to grow their photography businesses. So because of her personal brand, she was able to charge a premium price and cap her weddings at 10 per year while still making six figures. And she was able to welcome hundreds, probably thousands now, I'm not sure, of photographers into her online courses. And just like Jenna, she has seen a lot of evolution within her personal brand as well. And I find that their target audiences tend to be around their same age bracket and going through the same seasons of life as them, so that they are able to show the parts of their life that resonate with their target audience while, not having to air everything out on the internet in order to be a personal brand. A few others that you can take a look into if you're looking for examples of personal branding are Amy Porterfield. She does online marketing. Gary V or Gary Vaynerchuk, he does social media marketing. Neil Patel and Marie Forleo. Those are all some good ones to kind of take a look at. funny enough, I kind of went right alongside the industries that Gemini mentioned were known for thought leadership. One of those was business/marketing. So almost all of my folks here have some tie back to business or marketing. And at the end of the day, the main similarities that I see within all of these different personal brands are, here are the top three. First, they have consistent brand messaging, just like we talked about earlier. Second, they consistently engage their audiences on the platforms where the audience already naturally shows up the most. And then third, they have brought their audience together as a community where they have established themselves as the leader of that specific community. Like I said, you can become an expert in anything. Well, you can create your own community, become the leader of as well. So that ties together the thought leadership piece as well as the personal branding piece. So after you've defined your core values and mission, you've defined your brand messaging and determined where your audience hangs out, then you can begin to incorporate these other tactics with your content creation to bring your audience together as a community and really pop off your personal brand. Okay, let's summarize some of the key takeaways from today's episode. First, all thought leaders can be influencers, but not all influencers can be thought leaders. Second, before committing to becoming a thought leader, be sure that it's a good fit for your personality and your industry. Third, incorporate personal branding into your thought leadership to become truly remarkable by defining your core values, your mission, and your brand messaging. If after listening to this episode, you decide to take action on defining your personal brand or becoming a thought leader, I would absolutely love for you to screenshot this episode and then tag me on Instagram because that's where I hang out the most. And you can tag me at Allie Rae Haney, ALIRAEHANEY, so that I can follow along with your journey. That's all I got for today. So signing off until next week. But until then, keep dreaming, keep creating, and remember, your brand is your story. Let's tell it together.
As my son would say, did it! You just completed another episode of the Allie Rae Haney Show. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so you never miss an episode. Take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned in today's episode. Let's continue the conversation over in my private Facebook group, the Allie Rae Haney Show Insiders. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.